All right, we are now live. Welcome to the show, everyone. Trump has declared a Liberation Day yesterday and officially announced a broad reciprocal, sorry about that, guys, tariff regime that is an attempt to level the playing field after decades of imbalanced trade between U.S. and other nations. The questions on everyone's mind are, is this a good idea, and will it work the way that the president wants it to? We will get to that. Also, employees at our public health agencies are losing their minds and their jobs, and the White House says the firings will continue until morale improves. Tim Walz has a weird Marxist comic book as part of school curricula, and the Free and Democratic France is imprisoning their populist political opponent over something that nobody else gets imprisoned for. We are going to talk about all of this in episode 490 of the In the Tank podcast.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
All right. Welcome to the In the Tank podcast, everyone. I am Linnea Lueken, and as usual, today we've got Jim Lakely, Vice President. Jim, what you got?
It's another typical spring day here in Chicago. Yesterday morning, I woke up, it was 33 degrees. By evening, when the sun went down, it was 72 degrees, and now it's 45 degrees. So I'm going to try to survive, but it's good to be here.
We also have Sam Karnick, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute. Sam?
Hi, Linnea. Good to be here. I'm looking forward to finding out what it's like to be liberated.
And Chris Talgo is unfortunately not able to make it today, guys. So put your condolences in the chat. He is injured, he's okay, but he was not able to come on camera today. Anyway, before we get started, as always, if you want to support the show, you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate there. Please also click the thumbs up to like the video. Remember that sharing helps break through some of YouTube's suppression. Even just leaving a comment helps. If you're an audio listener, you can help us out by leaving a very nice review. As always, we are going to begin with our Unhinged segment. I purposefully did not watch this video ahead of time. Jim recommended it, and I saw the title, and I immediately said yes. So we are going to get my fresh reaction to this video here. I'm looking forward to it. So let's do it.
That somebody that I work with is a conservative, and he's somebody who's really intelligent, and he's somebody who works in climate tech as a super smart guy, somebody I would never have thought was conservative, and apparently he is. And it's surprising and it's disgusting, but what's most surprising to me is the level of sudden hatred that I have for him. Sudden hatred for this man who I used to respect suddenly just went boop, and I hate him now.
Aw.
Oh, she seems nice.
Yeah. That video went viral on X this week, and I thought it would be a nice unhinged candidate, and I'm glad you picked it, Linnea. But there's so many layers to this. First of all, the need to share this, lying in bed with the camera holding your phone, feeling that, and if you notice, because I've watched this thing like 6 times, it's like, you notice she's very well made up, so she has to look great for her hate video. And, just the idea that you could be a perfectly respectable person until, or somebody could be you consider them perfectly respectable in your life. And then you discover that they think about things differently than you do. They have different politics than you. And then it's not just that, maybe I won't hang out with that person. Maybe I'll speak to them less or something like that. Or gosh, heaven forbid, maybe I'll engage in more conversations to understand where this person is coming from that differs from me. It goes to bleeping hatred. That's unhinged by definition. And it's just actually really sad. I mean, we didn't used to live in a world like this, but, leftism, what was it? Michael Savage had a book called Liberalism is a Mental Disorder. That was probably from 25 years ago. And I think he had it on the button. Leftism is certainly a mental disorder if it can make you fall into complete hatred because somebody is a conservative, somebody thinks differently than you. Gosh, and you wonder why we can't have calm, rational conversations about politics and policy and society these days. Well, that's why.
Yeah, there seems to be kind of like an epidemic of young women airing their relationship grievances in a very ugly way in public. I can't wait until that trend goes away. It's very unseemly. Well, Sam, did you have anything that you wanted to say about this one? It's not something that we have a whole lot that we can, have like a detailed commentary on, but I just thought that the audience, if they haven't already seen it, would probably find it interesting.
What's really interesting
she's
to
an
me
idiot.
is that she looks at the at other people's points of view as reflecting their character. So does it? Because if your point of view is that you hate people who think differently from you, I'm not sure that that's a character trait that too many people would admit that they think is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's obviously blatantly absurd on its face, and Jim was absolutely right that it is unhinged. This is a person who's absolutely not thinking, and she's just operating in a, well, I'm going to use a word that has lost its luster over the years, but hysteria. She is actually suffering from hysteria. I can say it because it's true.
I mean, I'd also add that it's quite common that people on the right have many friends that disagree with them politically. This seems to be a one-way street by and large. I mean, I'm sure I know there's been studies on this, that people who are on the left tend to be less happy than people not on the left, and that people on the left are unwilling to be friends with people who disagree with them politically. Conservatives have lived, like if conservatives had that kind of a ideological litmus test for every aspect of their life, they probably never leave the house. They certainly wouldn't be watching any modern Hollywood entertainment. They probably wouldn't be reading much media either, although now there's a much different media ecosystem than there was, even 10, 15 years ago. But, the one-way street of this is what's really kind of striking to me, because I have many friends that disagree with me politically. We don't talk about politics because I choose not to do that, because I don't want to trigger them, because I know that they will go insane. When they try to engage me in political talk, I will usually quietly express my views and then just move on, because I could talk about it for a long time. We talk about stuff like this on this show all the time, for an hour every week, and it's fine. But you cannot do that with a leftist in your presence. And so, to be polite, most conservatives just keep it to themselves.
Yeah, Christine Laurel in our chat makes a good point. She goes, it's so hypocritical of people who claim to be tolerant and embrace diversity. Well, there's an interesting thing about that is actually on a lot of psychological studies, they find that conservatives are actually rate much higher in empathy than liberals do, as in like the real definition of empathy being aware of and being able to understand, or at least, or even like vicariously like understand the feelings or like where someone's coming from on something. And liberals actually rank very low in empathy, despite the fact that they use that word like a club all the time. They actually have a very poor understanding of where other people come from or how someone might come rationally to and lovingly and rationally to a position that's different from their own. So I didn't want to spend too much time on that, but man, it's just, it's hard to watch that stuff, isn't it?
There's just briefly, there's a
Yeah.
pair of graphs that you can find on Twitter that show how conservatives and liberals or leftists differ in their point of view on what they care about. So conservatives tend to care about people who are closer to them and less care about people who are farther away, and rocks and galaxies. Whereas the people on the left care a lot about rocks and galaxies and very much less about people who are closer to them. And that would also explain why they give less to charity and have a host of other characteristics that sort of fit that pattern.
Yep, absolutely. Everybody's seen the heat map meme at this point. I think it's a good one. And I think JD Vance even referenced it recently in an interview, which is fun to have a very online vice president. It's been very entertaining. Anyway, speaking of empathy, which I don't find that I have a whole lot for these health agencies that are being purged, and science.org is very concerned about it. They write, President Donald Trump's administration has begun at an expected and sweeping purge of senior officials at the nation's federal health agencies. Since last night, the evening before, National Institutes of Health Director Bhattacharya's, his name is just, it kills me every time. First day on the job, at least 5 directors of NIH's 27 institutes and centers have been told that they are being reassigned. Several center directors at the Food and Drug Administration were also removed. Some have been given 1 day or less to decide whether they are willing to move to jobs in Oklahoma, Alaska, and other states. I'm going to pause there for a second because I want to point out it's not like some of these people are being, fired. They're actually just being asked to move to not be in like fancy DC area, and they're losing their minds over it. So FDA, as we've known it, is finished. Robert Califf, who led the agency under former President Joe Biden, wrote on LinkedIn, most of the leaders with institutional knowledge and a deep understanding of product development and safety no longer employed. I believe that history will see this as a huge mistake. Okay, so Sam, this seems like a good point at first blush, maybe. There are people who have been at these agencies for a very long time. They know them very well, all the mechanisms and stuff. Is it actually a problem for them to be done away with or even just moved? Or are they more likely to be representatives of a corrupt establishment that's been maintaining like pharma and big ag, deep state or something at these agencies? After all, one of the main examples that popped into my head about why like the USDA deserves a lot of bullying, frankly, and skepticism is because the USDA for decades has been saying that you should be eating 6 to 11 servings of grains like bread and pasta in order to be healthy per day. Most dietary science seems to say that that is an awful idea, actually. So are these guys really the cutting edge, and like is our healthcare or our ability to be healthy in this country going to fall apart because we're kicking these guys to the curb?
It is interesting that Califf takes the assumption that the FDA has been doing good work. The fact that it takes forever and costs a fortune for a drug to get approved when it's proven safe. It's proven safe very early in the process at the FDA. But then after that, it has to be proven effective. Well, that sounds like a reasonable thing, but it takes years and years for that proof to arrive. And yet, then when the government says, "Well, we need a vaccine for the common cold," oh wait, it was called COVID, I think. So we need a vaccine for that. So we'll just bypass everything because it's an emergency. The fact is that the FDA is a horribly sclerotic, slow-moving agency. It doesn't do its work well at all, and it needs a kick in the pants. And the same is true of our entire healthcare system. It needs massive reforms. Now, how you get there is an important question, because we're not going to get the kind of reforms that you need without congressional action. And to get congressional action, you're going to have to. There are so many moving parts in each of these systems that you're going to have to make changes that will accommodate all of them. Now, the Heartland Institute a few years ago, around 2021, 2020, came up with a plan how you could create a healthcare system that a federal how you could rework our federal regulatory system over healthcare in a way that would make things much more market-oriented and much more responsive to individual and consumer needs. That's still available, and we've actually done a sequel that shows how you can repair things on the state level as well. The American Healthcare Plan, we call it. The point is, though, that in order to fix this system, you've got to think big, and you've got to start from scratch and rework everything, because it all goes back to 1965, which is when Medicaid and Medicare started, and you put all that together, and what you've done is you've just added a huge amount of demand to the system by doing that. And what you need to do is decouple insurance and care, and you have to give people power over the prices that they're charged, which is the truth in any other market. So that's a long way around, but I wanted to get to the important point here, which is that what we saw yesterday, boy, that's the beginning. That's the beginning of the beginning. We're not even at the end of the beginning, and it's going to be much more controversial than what we had yesterday or in the last few days.
Jim, you're muted.
I pulled a Jim. Yes, I was typing a lot, so I didn't want to have all the clicks in there. So apologies to everyone. But, one thing to point out, of course, is that this happens in the private sector all the time. This is not a big deal. The idea that the people that have been, the idea that a federal job is a lifetime appointment and that you should never be moved or fired or even have your thing adjusted, as you said, hey, you don't have to stop working for NIH or the CDC. You just have to move to Anchorage, Alaska. I have family in Anchorage, Alaska. It's a wonderful place. You should really embrace that and maybe unplug a little bit. But on top of that, there is no section of the federal workforce that has earned a purging like this more than our public health services like NIH, CDC, and the FDA. They brought this upon themselves. They destroyed public confidence and trust in our public health agencies, and they did it on purpose with reckless abandon. And this is the result. This is what happens to you. And this is what should happen to you. And if it wasn't for the election of Donald Trump, none of this would be happening. We're finally seeing some accountability for the people that made up all of these rules. These are the same people that who made up the 6 feet of separation out of thin air. These are the people that conspired to hide the truth about where COVID came from and call people who said that it probably came. Obviously, you don't even have to be that smart to figure out logically that it came from a lab that was working on this very virus. No, you're a racist for saying that. These people push that message. These are the people who lied about the death rate of COVID. I just saw a video on this the other day. They said that the death rate was 3.4%, which was an alarming number. Donald Trump actually came out and said, the people I'm talking to say that the death rate is actually below 1%. He was pilloried by our media, especially on CNN, for lying to the American people about the fatality rate of COVID. Wow, shocker. Turns out Trump was right, and the critics of the alarmism were right. It was under 1%, and that's even putting on top of the fact that these are the same agencies that fired nurses for not getting, and doctors and nurses for not getting the jab, and also incentivized hospitals lying about people who die from COVID, saying they died of COVID when they just happened to die having COVID, with COVID. And the fact that almost everybody on Earth contracted this virus, that was a blatant lie. These are the same people who shut down our schools, who destroyed thousands of small businesses, who sent the police to arrest people for going to church, who said it was okay to protest for social justice. That's a fine thing to do because we have to fight systemic racism, and that's a public health threat. They actually said that. But you can't attend your mother's funeral. Nope, nobody can go to that. In fact, your elderly loved ones have to die alone. All of the horribles that happened to us starting in about March of 2020, these people were responsible for. There was never any accountability to it. There was never even a sense of remorse from any of these people. And so, thank you. This is the happiest news of the week for me. And you guys can just cry more about it on X all you want. You're out. And I think we need to institutionalize, as a government, accountability on this scale when the offenses that agencies like the people in the agencies like this have inflicted upon society are as grave as what happened here.
I think I'm going to give you an award for that Jim rant. That was probably the best one we've had in a while. It was wonderful. Okay, thank you, Jim.
All right.
No, you're totally right. And it's amazing to me, the idea that, when you, like you mentioned, like Sam mentioned before, in the private sector, it's not a big deal when someone high up in the company gets let go when they've been there for a long time or retires. What's the difference between one of these people deciding to step down through retirement and them getting reassigned or let go? Either way, you're losing this essential person who, without this essential person, the industry or the agency will fall apart, fall to pieces. It's nonsense. Everyone knows it's nonsense. It's not as if, like there's only, well, I would hope not. I mean, it's possible, I guess. What I'm about to say is that there's like one guy in the entire FDA who knows how the filing system works. I wouldn't put it past government, honestly, to have it set up that way. But I would hope, I would assume that that's not the case.
He may be the only person who knows. He may be the only person who knows which cave in Colorado the files are in.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean,
we can't run our computer system without this one guy. Like, we probably shouldn't have our government agencies set up like that in the first place. So.
One thing I find interesting about this is that the key thing right now is that Bhattacharya is removing, and his people are removing higher level people. They do have a whole lot of grants and grant proposals to process, and they have grants that have already been awarded, and those need to be processed. It's like taking away somebody's Social Security. Wait, you said this was coming, and now it's not. You really can't do that to people. But bureaucrats who are just sitting there and creating and maintaining these systems that slow everything down and that put on scientific research, put on things that are completely unscientific and have nothing to do with doing science, those people should go. And so you could make a very strong case that this is the right approach, which is to, as I say, move out the people who have been doing these things and get new ones in who will do what the president was elected to do.
Just had kind of a dark thought. Sorry, Jim.
Well, no, I mean, even if you're being, even if you're not as angry as I am, but if you're being very charitable, just objectively, these agencies failed at every important job it had for the last 5 years. Nobody in the private sector would retain their job with that level of failure. And it's not even just failure. These weren't even mistakes. Add on to that the fact that we were lied to by these agencies, purposely misled and lied to, and had the speech of people who thought differently suppressed. They were all part of the censorship regime in the Biden administration. So I'm sorry, I don't want to get mad again, but like, even just if you were just to calmly look at what their record is, they earned a firing because they failed at the one job that they had. In fact, the most important job they had was to maintain what we used to have in this country, which was faith in our public health system. And they destroyed that for politics. And so letting them go and keep their pension is a pretty generous offer, if you ask me.
Yeah.
They're being fired for doing exactly what they were told. And they should be fired for that. Because what they were told to do was abominable. and worse than wrong, and they actually are responsible for many deaths. And so, yes, they should be fired, but they were doing what their president told them to do, and now Trump and his team are being criticized for telling these agencies what to do. So the issue here is not really. It's not a matter of process. It's not that Trump needs to do it this way, the way it's always been done. It's a matter of the results. They want the results that they want, which is more government control over things, especially federal government control. And since they're not getting it, then they're upset about that. But interestingly enough, Trump is doing exactly what Biden was doing, which is getting his team to do what he wants them to do.
Nope, Linnea.
Yep.
There you are.
Yeah, I know. I keep freezing. I'm not sure what's going on here. I think the wind is blowing, which makes my Wi-Fi go out. So that's nice. But yeah, we have a clip here. We have a video to play of I think it's an HHS ex-employee harassing one of our representatives. So let's pull that up.
A worker at HHS. I was fired illegally on February 14th. There are many people who are not getting social service programs, especially people with disabilities. Are you going to do anything to stop what's happening?
You probably deserved it.
I deserved it?
You probably deserved it.
I deserved it.
Dude, that's
wow.
so rude and sad.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Why did I deserve it?
Because you seem like a clown.
Okay, sir, you shouldn't have said that.
There's never been a video with better timing than that.
That is
was
pretty
just
good.
excellent.
Yeah, and again, I mean, the purpose of Doge is to make the government more efficient. The idea that even a small percentage cut in the staffing of these places means that all sorts of people with disabilities aren't getting services is absurd. There is no entity on earth less efficient than a government bureaucracy, especially at the federal level. So like I said, cry more. I want to see 10 videos like that on X every day. Make me very happy.
Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, and that guy almost certainly is a clown. I'm going to guess that the person harassing our representative there from, I think, Indiana, was it?
Indiana.
Yep. That's yours, Sam. I believe that this guy was probably not one of the like vitally important scientists who's about to majorly fix. I don't know what someone could even have, a super important position at the HHS. I don't even know. So yeah, he probably was a clown. Anyway, speaking of clowns, Tim Walz has a Marxist comic book that he's trying to put into their school curriculum. The National Review writes, if you want to understand the dilemma of today's Democratic Party, have a look at this comic book called Racial Capitalism and Prison Abolition. Thanks to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, this comic book, or its close equivalent, will soon be forced on Minnesota students. Because Walz had just added an ethnic studies strand to his state's social studies standards, wow, say that fast, okay, all Minnesota school children must shortly be exposed to a discipline that is essentially a cousin of CRT. As part of their mandatory ethnic studies training, Minnesota students are going to have to develop an analysis of racial capitalism, an abstruse concept created by theorists of Black Marxism. The idea of racial capitalism is breathtakingly radical. It delegitimates America's free enterprise system, America's legal system, and even the very belief that there can be such a thing as crime under current circumstances. Implicit in the racial capitalism concept, and sometimes explicit, is the belief that America's unjust system may need to be swept away by a violent rebellion or revolution. It's all in the comic book. This is what civics has become under the governance of Tim Walz. Man, Jim, we really dodged a bullet here. Not just not having Kamala as president, but not having Tim Walz anywhere near the White House. You brought this subject to our attention. It seems from this that we haven't quite won the war on DEI and like woke in the school systems yet. So what's your take here?
Yeah, I mean, my first take is like, what the hell's going on up there in Minnesota? I mean, what? I don't have any family in Minnesota, but I know people that live in Minnesota, and it's such a nice, wonderful place full of very friendly people. And you keep allowing yourselves to be ruled by absolute radical nut job Marxists to the effect that, I mean, the one good thing out of COVID and Zoom school across the country was that parents were able to actually see what their kids were being taught in school, and they were not being really taught more as much as being indoctrinated. And this, I mean, a radical Marxist comic book to teach children to hate their country and to consider capitalism as evil and socialism as morally good. So they're obviously not being taught the history of communism and Marxism in the 20th century, which led to the death of at least 100 million people worldwide. That is not what they're being taught. They're being taught that, in fact, I'm looking here, one of the pages, actually, if Andy, if you don't have it up on screen, you can bring it up on screen. Not only is it radical Marxism, it's an objectively shitty looking comic book. I'm sorry. First of all, maybe it's supposed to be a coloring book because it's all in black and white. But it just is this messaging of leftist messaging that I think would be even radical if it was taught on a college campus. But having this sort of radical ideology to hate your country, to basically hate your fellow man, hate anybody who is a successful person. I mean, they characterize capitalism as oppression. They characterize there's a panel in there where they have a drawing of men on horseback with cowboy hats that were hunting down escaped slaves, and says there is a direct line. There it is, right there on the screen. Slave patrols existed in the U.S. from 1704 to 1877, 173 years. There is a direct lineage between slave patrol institutions and the police. This is and that's probably one of the more mild criticisms of Marxist comic book. So if you people in Minnesota need to make us think about this, because the idea that this would find its way as an instructional manual for impressionable children in public schools in Minnesota is an absolute outrage.
It's very bizarre. The National Review points, the author of that article that I was reading from points out too that there's something like kind of strange going on here with the Democrat Party in general. He writes that explicit leftist radicalism is now so deeply rooted in the party that efforts to disguise it are at once unavoidable and impossible. It's been noted that the Democrats are dangerously enthralled to the groups. Leftist nonprofits used to be a force multiplier for the party. Nowadays, though, their maximalist ideological demands tend to pull the party away from the electorate. Minnesota's new ethnic studies standards and their implementation framework exemplify the perils of the groups. Walz turns the task of designating Minnesota's ethnic studies program over to politically radical activists rather than to the conventional academic subject matter experts. That placated the Democratic base, yet it's led to a series of ideological fiascos ever since. And Sam, this is something that we've heard about before, that these Democrat nonprofits are wildly out of step with what the average Democrat voter wants. And I think that Minnesota is a super powerful proving ground for that. The average, even Minnesota Democrat that you run across is kind of just like the most casual, friendly, kind of not radical. Well, my grandpa voted Democrat, so I vote Democrat kind of person, kind of like how parts of the South used to be, right? They're typically very friendly, and they're typically very, let's say, they don't have suspicions about, and I say this because I have family there, and a lot of the time, Minnesotans, even conservative Minnesotans, really kind of seem to shield their eyes from the really bad stuff going on. They tend to take a little bit of a blue skies approach to politics. And that's part of why I think they've been able to be run by these radicals for so long. It's a very strange situation that they've put themselves into.
Minnesota has long had a long socialist history. A lot of socialist power up there, and a lot of the Great Plains areas have had that in the past too. The Grange and organizations of that sort. So there is a history of socialism there, but this isn't even socialism. This is something that's in my view, crazier and more out there than sort of Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam notion that certain people of a certain color were literally created by demons, that they were born from demons. But what's interesting is that at least the Nation of Islam idea, the Louis Farrakhan, that's kind of imaginative, and you really get your head around that. Oh, wow, they're made by demons. Whereas this is just stupid. It is incredibly stupid and incompetent. And what's fascinating to me is how the Democrat Party and the left have embraced incompetence, and they've embraced failure. The notion that purity of thought and purity of expression are the most important thing, that your intentions are all that count. This is a rather new thing. You usually don't see that kind of embrace of incompetence, and you can imagine that perhaps there are enough people like the young lady we saw in the unhinged clip that they can somehow grab power back in 2026 and thereafter. But it does seem to me that they have so lost the plot. They've so lost their understanding of the connection between cause and effect. And I'm not kidding about that. They actually seem to have lost the realization that if X, then Y, if A, then B. They seem to have lost that, and the loss of that makes it, in my view, really difficult for them to make any kind of case to rational people. And there are rational people out there, even in Minnesota, apparently, I would guess. So, and no, obviously there are. The people of Minnesota, I'm sure Donald Trump would say, oh, I love those people in Minnesota. They're great people. And I'm sure they are. They haven't been told what's been going on. That's obvious. And this only was revealed by some investigation into the matter. And it all really does go back to the Zoom learning, that parents found out what was going on and they were appalled because the schools had kept this quiet. They had kept all this quiet. They said, you don't need to know and you don't get to know. This is confidential stuff. This is our curriculum. We don't owe you our curriculum. And of course, the answer to that should be, oh, yes, you do. We pay for it. So you better tell us what you're up to. But they didn't have any way of sweeping those people out except to go against their long history of belief in socialism. And because this socialist movement in the United States had been taken over by the identity movement. And so when you put those two together, there's no press for competence among people like that. It's all about who you are and what class you're in, and also what is the social advantage that is to be got from taking a particular position publicly. When you've got a woman in very elaborate makeup lying on her bed with her camera up, holding her camera up, and saying, "I now hate this guy because I found out that he's some sort of a Trump supporter." Ooh. When that's what your social status is going to hinge on, you're making it not about what people think and what the results of their actions will be. You're making it about what they stand for, and it's just a matter of just saying it. It's not even a matter of it making any sense at all.
Yep, absolutely. It's very bizarre that this kind of stuff gets a foothold anywhere, especially in, kind of places that are kind of knee-jerk, socially conservative, like Minnesota tends to be, especially when you get out there away from the cities. So I'm going to move on to our next subject here so we can truck along and get to our Liberation Day topic. But topic number 3 here is going to be about stopping populists at all costs. So I regret to inform everyone that France is at it again. Populist candidate Marine Le Pen has been eliminated from the presidential race or from being allowed to participate in any politics at all for about 5 years. She also faces house arrest for 2 years and a $100,000 fine. This is all for allegedly misusing EU funds. She's not actually, it's important to be clear that she's not actually charged with profiting. Like, she wasn't embezzling funds and putting them in her bank account or something. But some of her aides, which are paid with EU funds, did political work not related to their actual parliamentary work. And that's what is considered embezzling in this case. Normally, politicians are fined and nothing more for this misstep in France. But weirdly, not Le Pen. Amazingly, Reuters reports that her 5-year ban from politics begins now, despite the fact that she's appealing the decision, and the fine and imprisonment do not begin until after the appeals are worked through. So she is being specifically targeted politically. So it's not just cheese-making friends doing this. Brazil's courts are trying to jail Bolsonaro, and Romania barred their populist frontrunner from the election eligibility as well. And Italy's prime minister has also been pursued by courts. So this all just stinks, frankly, of what they tried to do to Trump, doesn't it, Jim? Right. It really is remarkable that this is going on in places. I don't know about Brazil and Romania, but purportedly Italy and France are liberal countries, right? All these situations are different and unique. Everybody is being tried for different things. But at the same time, they carry the same kind of general theme here.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump was asked about this in a press availability in the Oval Office the other day, and he said, rightly, "Oh, that sounds like the United States of America right now," or at least it was a little while ago. I mean, obviously, these charges against Le Pen are trumped up and phony. And even if they were true, or even if they were serious, the usual thing would just be to fine or something like that, not threat of imprisonment, and not, well, you can't run for office now. What we're learning, and we learned here in the United States, coming up to the 2020 election, and we see now in Western Europe, is that the power-hungry global elite that have controlled everything for decades, they're not going to go away as quietly as we had hoped. In fact, they intend to not go away at all, to the point that they will not allow the people to vote for their leaders, the leaders that they want. That's not how they want to operate society. That is definitionally tyrannical. They have no interest in what the people want. They have interest in ruling the people and retaining power for themselves, with very few exceptions. This is why Viktor Orban is constantly demonized and attacked. Thankfully, in his country, he is the reflection of the people in his country. Marine Le Pen, like it or not, global elites, is what the people of France, of all places, France wants. They want to throw out the corrupt, leftist, Marxist, globalist ruling class and try another way. And so even when in all of these countries, even in Germany, if a non-leftist, and again they call them far right, for espousing the views that were probably 90% espoused by Bill Clinton here in the United States in the 90s. That is now far right. It is not far right. It is reasonable, and it has the popular support of the people in almost all these countries. And because most of these countries in Europe have parliamentary systems, when the plurality of the voters vote for a more rightward direction, all of this quote unquote center left parties get together, conspire to make sure that that party is locked out. It happened in Germany. It happened in France. It happens in the UK. It happens in all of these places. So the revolution, the counter revolution, I should say, that is a global movement right now, from center right people, from the people, a popular uprising, peaceful popular uprising, is going to take a little longer than we had hoped. And let's also just one last thing about this, because this is exactly how it worked in the United States in our elections with Donald Trump. Let's not forget, Donald Trump today would be in jail. He would be spending the rest of his life in prison if he didn't win that 2024 election. Right now, he would be behind bars. Elon Musk's entire capitalist enterprise would be in ruins right now if Donald Trump did not win that election. I know that people keep saying that elections are important. I actually want to live in a world in which elections are not that important, where the who is ruling over us is not the most important thing in the world. But we don't live in that world yet. But this is the global left is going to use every single tool at its disposal to retain power, and it includes the absurd decision against Marine Le Pen. They are going to regret this, because once the people find no way to legally and peacefully have their will reflected in their government, it gets very dark very fast.
And it's amazing to see, there's like populist uprisings kind of all over the place in Europe. And the as one of our viewers have mentioned, it's like the WEF people seem to be on it a bit. Oh, did I freeze again? Bummer. Anyway, yeah. So it's kind of frightening to see, what would have happened had Trump not been able to get in. We're getting little hints of that all over the place. Like you said, Jim, I think it's just going to take more time than we had been kind of crossing our fingers about. Same with Britain and a bunch of other more frostier countries up in Northern Europe, probably further behind than everybody else. But I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think that the global progressive order is sustainable. Mostly because it rejects reality a good amount of the time, and reality has a way of coming in and kind of aggressively reasserting itself.
Well, yeah, I mean, either the people get to choose their leaders in a Western democratic republic society, or they don't. And right now, the global ruling elite have decided that you don't get to do that. But you can't do that and still pretend that you are a modern democracy, and that and democracy matters to you and all this. So you can't do that anymore, and people see it now. And like I said, if this continues, and these charges should be dropped against Marine Le Pen right now, it tells you actually how dangerous they think we are. We meaning the people. That you can't elect your own leaders, that they think that that it would be the end of them. And maybe it would be, and that would be okay. I don't mean the end as in like they're deleted from the earth, but you've had your chance, you've had every advantage, and the people are rejecting you because you are a failure, and you've ruined these countries in so many ways. Western Europe is being lost, and the people want to save it, and the global elites will not allow them to do that. And again, this only ends badly if you do not respect the will of the people.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. Sam, go ahead.
The bigger problem here is that this is not just these isolated. Obviously, it's not the isolated situations where they stop short of real outrages. It seems very clear that there were assassination attempts on Donald Trump that should never have got anywhere near as far as they did. So I'm putting that as politely as I can. but this is weird stuff. And I think when it gets to the point of assassination attempts, that just shows you how important what Trump and his movement are, because it has a worldwide effect. We have seen some. Well, first of all, there were all these color revolutions that were created by the United States, in particular our CIA, during the Obama administration. All these color revolutions in other countries. And then we had a color revolution in our own country in 2008. And then from there, it has gone on to where they had an accidental election in 2016. And the revolution was rolled back for a time. Then they got it back, and whatever happened in 2020, it certainly wasn't normal. So there are these are enormous movements here, world level movements. And so right now you have a color revolution going on in Serbia. This is not natural to Serbia. It's not coming from Serbia. It's coming from elsewhere. And we had during the Obama administration a color revolution in Ukraine, where they had a legitimately elected government, and it was run out of business by Europe and the United States. So we have these big movements going on that are very well financed, and the money isn't coming from within these countries necessarily. Within these countries, when you're looking at this high level of activity. So the point is that there is several different levels of activity. Some of them are mere harassment. The press that Trump gets, for example, it's harassment, and it's stupid and silly. But then it goes all the way up through trying to put a person in prison so that they won't be able to take office, and then failing that, to kill them. And then failing that, what you've done is you've simply revealed to the world your incompetence, and they had to step back and try and figure out what to do. So they had a 23-hour, 24-hour speech or whatever it is. They're flailing. But what happened in the Ukraine is part and parcel of all this, and the attempted assassinations on Trump are part of this whole movement. They're not giving up. They're not quitting. They just don't know how to do anything at this point. And again, because they don't believe in cause and effect, as far as I can discern.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of cause and effect, Sam, thank you for that good transition. Liberation Day. Okay, guys. Sam, I know you have a lot to say on this one, but I'm going to set the scene for us here. The Epoch Time reports that Trump unveils sweeping global tariffs. The U.S. will impose 10% universal tariffs, higher rates for countries with more trade barriers. White House senior officials provided details on the new tariffs. So there's a new 10% baseline tariff on all U.S. trading partners to go into effect April 5th. Additional reciprocal tariffs will be implemented April 9th. The additional tariffs will amount to half of what those countries levy on the United States, factoring in their non-tariff barriers. A handful will be subject to reciprocal tariffs beyond the 10% flat rate, according to a sheet provided by the White House. Trump declared a national emergency under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The White House says this is not a negotiation. When they were asked if countries can negotiate out of the tariffs, the president will respond if any countries choose to retaliate. The tariffs do not apply to those previously announced on products like steel, aluminum, copper, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, and lumber. Canada and Mexico remain under the 25% fentanyl response tariff for now. Products compliant with the United States-Canada-Mexico agreement, or sorry, I just said that backwards, but will continue to be subject to a 0% tariff. Non-USMCA compliant products will receive a 25%. Non-USMCA compliant energy and potash will receive a 10% tariff. And if fentanyl and illegal immigration related tariffs on Canada and Mexico are terminated, USMCA products will continue receiving preferential treatment or non-compliant goods will be subject to a 12-month or 12% reciprocal tariff. Okay, guys, my dog is freaking out. The economists are freaking out. All of the smart people are freaking out. The people who stare at stock graphs are freaking out. But then we have Israel dropping their tariffs on U.S. goods. We have Canada announcing that they're talking about reducing their tariffs. Vietnam is cutting their input duties on U.S. goods. India is negotiating cutting tariffs on U.S. goods. So I've seen a lot of people ask, if tariffs are so bad, then why have all of our supposed allies been using them on us for all of these years? So Sam, the floor is yours. Is this situation a free market lover's nightmare? That seems to be the case for a lot of our friends in the libertarian kind of side of things, and on the free market side of things, they are not having a good week. Can you explain to us why we should not be freaking out about this?
I think that you're right. We shouldn't be freaking out about this. The big thing here is they're looking at things in isolation. So when you look at tariffs, you go, well, tariffs are going to raise prices, so that's going to be inflation. That's not possible. It's simply impossible for tariffs to create inflation. If anything, they can have a slightly deflationary effect, but they can't cause inflation simply because if the Fed doesn't make more money, doesn't create more money, and if the federal government doesn't spend more money in deficit terms, then you won't get the inflation. What you'll get is a substitution effect. So the key thing here is if you look at things in isolation, you're not going to get it right. You're not going to understand what's really happening. I believe that one of the things that we need to do is we need to look at people. What are their real motives? What are they really thinking here? And in terms of President Trump, he says a lot of different things, and people say, well, that's incoherent. All the different things he says are contradicting one another. But in fact, I'm not sure that they are. My belief here is that, well, let me see this. He keeps talking about deindustrialization and good American jobs and things like that. And he also talks a lot about the current accounts deficit. Now, current accounts is how much you're buying from country X and how much they're buying from you. If they're buying more in dollars from you than you are from them, then you have a current account surplus. And if you're buying more from them than they're buying from you, you have a current account deficit. And the U.S. has been running massive current account deficits for decades. Now, here's the thing. If we had truly free international markets and a free market in the United States, I don't see how you could run current account deficits for decades. It just doesn't make sense. So why is this occurring? I believe it's all coming from the fact that the United States, since the Nixon administration, has been the world's reserve currency. That is, people around the world want dollars so that they can trade in a stable currency, since there's no gold standard. And all the currencies float against one another, which happened right after World War II in a agreement called the Bretton Woods Agreement. So what happens is, as all these currencies are floating around against one another, how do you get a consistent currency so that you know that down the road, when you're buying something and you have to pay it off over time or whatever, or you're doing a future, or you're building something that's going to be sold, these things are all for the future. So you have to have a currency that is going to be stable. That has been the US dollar, because we had the greatest economy, we had the strongest military, we had all kinds of advantages that made people want dollars. So what we have there is that you run these constant current account deficits. Now, what that does is it means the other countries, they have to get dollars in order to make their trades. And in order to do that, that means the best way is to sell things to the United States so that they'll get dollars from us. And so they have an incentive to run current account deficits so that they can have enough dollars on hand to trade with one another. Now, that causes the value of the dollar to keep increasing because demand for dollars is high. So that causes the value of the dollar to keep increasing. And of course, that exacerbates your current account deficits because it makes it cheap. It makes things from other countries cheaper in the United States and things from the United States cheaper in other countries. I don't want to get into too much detail there because people will start to lose the thread. But the key thing here is this: is what Donald Trump really cares about that we have the same tariffs as other countries for that purpose, for the purpose of having the same tariffs as other countries? I don't think he does. I don't think that's what he's about at all. I think what is going on here is that Trump and his administration have recognized that the use of the United States dollar as a reserve currency, which isn't going to change. Nobody's going to be able to change that. So you can forget that. But the use of the US dollar as the reserve currency means we will always run these current account deficits and we will deindustrialize and we will lose jobs. Now, the thing is, you could have from the beginning had the other countries get dollars without having to sell us more than we sell to them, without having to run current account surpluses against us. How could that have been done? Well, we could have sold more food to those countries, and they'd have bought those with U.S. dollars, and so they would have had more product. We could have built houses and highways and electrical grids and other important properties, and that would have gone in dollars, trading. We could have bought land in those countries. Now, that's the most direct way. If we had bought land in those countries, we'd have been sending them dollars. And those other things I just mentioned, they would get goods for their dollars, but they would be spending in dollars. In this, if they were selling properties to us, we would be giving them dollars. So why didn't this happen? I think the reason it didn't happen was because we took a very simple course in the 1970s and especially the 1980s and the 1990s. Is the idea was we'll just let it play out in the free market. That and what that led to is all that Trump is talking about, all these problems. It led to all those problems. The current account deficits that were caused by the use of the dollar's reserve currency. So what we could do is one of two things. We could either buy land from those countries and buy assets from them, and then they would have the dollars that they need. Apparently, they didn't want that. Apparently, those countries just didn't want that, and that's why it turned out this way, and we didn't force the issue. So that's number one way. But the other way is to eliminate tariffs from those other countries, because those other countries had tariffs so that they would create a current account surplus so that they could get dollars. That's the whole point of those tariffs. So those tariffs are to suppress U.S. sales into those countries and increase their sales to us. So if you eliminate those tariffs, so the point is he's not trying to put tariffs on other countries to get revenue here. If he truly is doing what it looks like when he's talking about deindustrialization, when he's talking about the loss of U.S. jobs, and when he's talking about the current account deficit, which he does a lot, and he's also talked about the reserve currency. You put all that together, then what you see is that his whole approach is actually working toward the elimination of tariffs against the United States. And what will that do? What that will do is completely rework the world economic order such that ultimately we're going to be buying things from them and giving them dollars, but we will get something for it. This is how Trump talks all the time. We're doing all this. We're giving all this defense to Europe. We're doing all this hard work for them. And what do we get for it? Nothing. What Trump is doing is creating a new system where if another country gets something from us, they will pay for it. And they will pay and they will get their dollars by giving us things that we want, and that we want because they benefit us. So in my view, I don't know that this is what they've done. I'm not. I haven't had done any investigative reporting on this. It's just been a matter of me thinking it through over the past several days. But to me, this is a solid and consistent explanation for what the Trump administration is doing and why Trump has taken this particular approach. And I would say, from my personal perspective, my view of it, it makes great sense. It makes great sense. And what he's trying to do is really something mind-blowingly big, world-changing action here. And we are living in a time when something as momentous as the Bretton Woods or the establishment of the Federal Reserve, terrible thing, something as momentous as that may be happening right now. And the reason I think that this must be true is because if I could think of it, they could. And why haven't other people figured this out? Because they're looking at little bits of it and not the big picture.
Right. And it's interesting too. And it makes your theory on this makes a lot of sense as to why he would be publicizing it the way that he is, like Liberation Day, all the fanfare. Thing. If this was just I don't like it that these countries treat us unfairly and we're going to go back and forth on them with that. If that's all that it was, then the way that he's marketing this plan would not really make very much sense. But and as Catherine Burke in our comments here just said, read Trump's books and you can see his philosophy and how he negotiates. He looks to have winners on all sides. And he thinks big. Make America great again is big. So yeah, I think people tend to not give Trump the credit that he deserves, but some people also give him way too much credit. So there's a balancing act there. But I think you're pretty much spot on with people like focusing super hard on the frankly kind of elementary. And I say this because this is the way that I've looked at economics, and I figure I'm not all that. I'm not all that versed. I was saying earlier, like Thomas Sowell basic economics is about as far as I went. But people like me are looking at it and saying, oh, tariffs are just going to make costs of things go up. And that's bad. And that's about as deep as we get into it, which surprises me to see from economists that I consider much more intelligent than me. But I saw someone else.
Can I jump in? I find it astonishing. I find it astonishing that people can seriously say that tariffs will create inflation. It's not possible. And I've said this on this show before and in my writings. It's just not possible. It's like saying, if you click your heels 3 times together, you'll be in Kansas. It's not possible. You may want it, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and it's I've seen some people say that there's one of 2 things going on here. No matter what's going on, Trump is choosing to do something that's going to have major impact. And it's either going to be terrible or it's going to be a huge overthrow of the economics of the last couple of decades. And it's going to change everything going forward. And nobody quite knows how to look at it. Because it's so different from what we've done for as long as anybody's been alive, that it's very, very frightening to a lot of people who have devoted their careers and their education to economics. And then all of a sudden to have this brash, Donald Trump come in and say, we tried that. It didn't really work for us too well. It's not working for us too well right now. So we're going to throw all of that out and just do what I feel like doing. And that's got to be terrifying.
That's like the purge of the health agencies. You see, it's like, well, this is the way we've always done it, so we have to do it that way. And the response is, no, we don't. we don't have to do it that way. We could do it the right way. We could do something that actually works. And the way you put it, I think, was really, really important, which is that instead of saying, well, Trump doesn't know what he's doing. Okay, it's plausible, but he keeps winning these elections, and He presided over an incredibly fabulous economy until the lunatics broke it in 2020, which he participated in, no question about it. But this to me seems like this makes sense. This is a plan. It's not just something like, oh, it necessarily must go bad because tariffs are bad. That's just can't. It's just can't. It's just the people singing tariffs are bad. Tariffs are bad. It doesn't tell us anything. But if you, like I say, if you look at it really deeply and see, well, what could he be wanting? What could he be aiming at here? If you try to put the imagination to it, that a very smart negotiator who is very intuitive too. I think that Trump's very intuitive. So when you look at it that way and try to say, well, what could they be up to? You look back and you go, you have to work from effect to cause instead of cause to effect to get this to become apparent to you. You go, okay, this is the effect, and then this is what's, and especially in this case, these are the effects that have happened. So we have this deindustrialization, we have this current account deficit. All these things happen. Well, what is the cause of all that? I think Trump is looking at it that it truly is the economic order, the international economic order has pounded the United States for several decades now, and we need to repair it. And I think this is his way of repairing it, is to create a system that will work on its own to repair the overall system. That it will be spontaneously generating better incentives and approaches to how the money moves around the world. It's fascinating.
No. Yeah, we need to remember too here that Donald Trump was almost killed, and he believes he was saved by God, and he believes he's still alive so that he could be a historic president. I see in the chat here that Charles Grassley is apparently wants to introduce a bill requiring congressional approval to impose tariffs. Well, good luck with that, Chuck. You're going to need a veto-proof majority for that, because obviously Donald Trump is not going to sign that. He is going to use his constitutional powers to their fullest in this way, and that's just the way it's going to go, and we're going to see how it plays out. But, what we've actually learned, we've had a really nice national conversation about this. We've never talked about tariffs, except for maybe, in that classroom in Ferris Bueller's Day Off when Ben Stein talked about tariffs. But look, we had tariffs before Donald Trump was elected. And as we pointed out here on this show in the past, Canada has a 250% tariff on American dairy products. Why do they have that tariff that high? Because they want to protect their domestic dairy industry, because they don't think they can compete if the American dairy products were allowed into the marketplace. They feel they would be harmed. They feel they're so afraid they'd be harmed that they put an enormous 250% tariff that most Americans didn't even know existed until Trump began this national discussion about tariffs. I find it really kind of funny that Doug Ford, he's the premier of Ontario, Canada, and he was talking a big game about, doing retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. just a few weeks ago. He was on CNBC yesterday, where he supported dropping all tariffs that Canada imposes on America, and to do it immediately. So he was out there crying uncle right away. So as we have to understand, and I think a lot of our listeners, and Sam and Linnea, we all understand this, that, and I've thought from the beginning, all this tariff talk is mostly a negotiating tactic by Trump to get better trade deals. In fact, Trump looks at the United States and all of its treaties and its trade deals, its international agreements, and thinks America got screwed on every one of those deals. That's just the way he thinks. He can't stand it. And he lives to make deals. So that's what he's doing. This is sport. There's a part of it that's sporting and fun to him. So him imposing tariffs on other countries at half the rate that they impose on the United States seems entirely fair to me. And it certainly seems fair to Donald Trump. So let's see how this plays out. As you mentioned at the start of this topic, Linnea, there are a handful of countries, and this list will grow, that are now wanting to come to a negotiating table and negotiate new tariffs or no tariffs with the United States. So at the end of this, within a month, maybe, or even less than that, Donald Trump will be able to wave in his hand pieces of paper with brand new trade deals that benefit the United States, benefit the countries that we cut those deals with, as one of our commenters pointed out. The art of the deal, Donald Trump wants winners on both sides. He wants to be a bigger winner, but there will be winners on both sides. You just wait. I have a feeling we're going to see. This is going to be a real lesson, and to the American people, we will see. I could be completely wrong. This could completely blow up and ruin the American economy and throw us all into a Great Depression. I seriously doubt that's going to happen. I think we're going to end up with better trade deals that benefit the United States, benefit those other countries, and frankly, benefits the world. We'll see.
Yeah, I think. Sorry about that. I was just going to say, I think that a lot of people don't realize that Americans, like the average American who doesn't have, a great economics background or something, they're looking at this and they're seeing like the way that Europeans are reacting very negatively, very viscerally negatively to this situation, and Canadians and stuff. And the average Joe, is sitting there like, listen, are you telling me that you've been having these tariffs on us for decades while also complaining about how you don't like Americans? Americans are so uncouth. Americans are bad. We wish Americans would go away, blah, blah, blah. And now Trump's like, well, fine. Screw you guys. we're gonna look inwards. We're going to be worried about American interests, and you guys can fight your wars and you guys can pay for your stuff. And now the Europeans are mad at that. So there's really no winning. And I love Europeans. I love Europe. I love the people who love their countries, but this whole thing where you like take money from the US and then kick us is just not going to work anymore for the average American. We're just fed up, done with it.
An interesting angle here is that one of the aha moments that has already occurred was that somebody pointed out that the tariff percentages that Trump set were basically seem to be entirely dependent not on the tariffs of that country, but on the current account deficit of that country that the U.S. is running against that country. Well, that actually is evidence for this interpretation that I've given, which is that what he's really concerned about is these current account deficits and how we can resolve that without America having to be hollowed out from the fact that our dollar is the world's reserve currency. It looks to me like that he's trying to fix that, and that this is certainly a way to do it. Will it be successful? Who knows? As Jim said, we could have a catastrophe, but I don't think so. This makes sense. This makes sense. It's a way of getting the dollars to flow in different directions, but that will be more beneficial to the United States. And the notion that the Europeans and don't like us and that they consider ourselves superior to us, that's something that really must annoy Trump no end.
Oh, yeah, in particular. Yeah. And that's why I brought it up. I didn't bring it up to kick our European viewers while they're down or anything at all. Like I said, I love them. But, this is stuff that Americans have been hearing for decades. And I'm sure that it really annoys Trump.
And the Europeans are down by their own choice. They chose socialism, and that's their problem, not ours.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm sorry. It's not in the tank if we don't go well over time because we didn't get to the main topic until almost the hour is already up. So we're going to unfortunately have to cut it short here, but that's all the time we have. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We are live every single week on Thursdays at noon Central on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. For audio listeners, please rate us well on whatever service you're using and leave a review. Thank you so much to our usual panelists here. Jim, do you have anything to pitch this week?
No, you can follow me at J Lakely on X, at Heartland Inst on X, and visit heartland.org.
All right, Sam, what you got?
At ST Karnick and stkarnick.substack.com.
Okay, well, thank you again, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow, hopefully, on the Climate Realism Show. If not, we'll see you again next week. Adios. Or not.